So I got to hang out with Tommy last week in New York on a Fox Nation special. And one of the things that I've increasingly come to appreciate about Tommy is your independence. You know, Tommy, and I don't give gratuitous compliments, so I say this because I think it's apropos to the conversation. The more that I get to know you, the more that I like you. It's interestingly, what made you famous is a certain version of Tommy. But the more I'm around you, Tommy, I hear to what to me is a surprising version of Tommy Lahren. And it's only because I'm getting to know you, I think, a little more. And who you are is not quite exactly the person that got famous. I'm not saying it's an act. I think with all of us, there's certain sides of us that everybody gets to know. And I'm seeing other sides of you. And the main thing I'm talking about right now is you're really independent and unpredictable. And what I'm talking about is when it comes to politics. So I want to ask you first, I think the way to start this conversation is probably the biggest news of the past 3 or 4 days, and that is the endorsement for Donald Trump by Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I was with you on Thursday. This happened on Friday, so I don't know yet what you'll say about RFK.
Well, the way I feel about RFK, and I've talked to his running mate, Nicole Shanahan, a few different times on my Outkick show, I love the independence. And honestly, one of the things that I love about RFK, regardless of the Trump endorsement, I know that there's a lot of conservatives that are now celebrating him, but even going back to way before that, what I appreciate about RFK is his battle against COVID protocols and COVID propaganda. That's something that I was very outspoken about and something that I was also censored about. So I've long respected him for that reason. He's got a commitment to free speech. There are a lot of things on his agenda that don't align with mine, but I appreciate his independence, and I also appreciate the fact that he is willing to really piss off his entire legacy family to be his own person, and even piss off Hollywood, because his wife is a fixture of Hollywood. Curb Your Enthusiasm, obviously a big star. So I appreciate the fact that he's willing to do what it takes to be true to himself and to have integrity to what he believes in, and some people don't think that's the case because he endorsed the almighty Donald Trump, and to them that's horrible. But for me, I think it was a wise decision on his part, and it just goes to show you how bad Joe and Kamala are, that they flipped a Kennedy to a Trumper.
Yeah, let's talk about RFK for a moment before we get to the impact on Trump. I saw Bradley Whitford. He is one of the stars, I guess, of the show West Wing, tweet at RFK's wife, Cheryl Hines. And Cheryl Hines, as Tommy mentions, is an actress. She was, for me, most notable in Curb Your Enthusiasm, the wife of Larry David. She's married to RFK, and Whitford tweeted at Hines how ashamed she should be that she sits silent while her husband endorses Donald Trump. And there is obviously a level of grotesqueness to that I think should be obvious to anyone, Tommy, but somehow escapes this Hollywood celebrity. Like, you are tweeting at the spouse of a man who's made a choice that you find disagreeable, and you think you're the good guy. And RFK's sister came out and disavowed herself, and many people have pointed out, notably Tammy Bruce at Fox, your family has helped apologize for or overlook all manner of sin, moral degradation, obviously womanizing in affairs, but even worse when it comes to Teddy Kennedy. Your family has stuck together, but the minute that one of your family members disagrees, this is the bridge too far. This is when he can no longer be a Kennedy. It is really gross the way that people around RFK are responding to his endorsement of Trump.
Well, I think it just goes to show when someone shows you who they are, believe them. And all these Kennedys, obviously a legacy family, it's always going to be an important family. And they can't take his name away, by the way. So as much as they want to disavow him and condemn him and tweet at him, it really doesn't matter. He's still a Kennedy. They don't have ownership of the Kennedy name. He's still a Kennedy. He can do what he wants. And, I think it's actually powerful when he's doing interviews and saying, listen, there's going to be more Democrats that are going to follow suit. In the coming days, you're going to see more Democrats coming out in support of Donald Trump. I don't know exactly who he means by that. I don't know if he's more referring to people like Tulsi Gabbard that have already left the Democrat Party, but I think it's a powerful thing that he's willing to go against his own family, and he's willing to be his own person. And he also brought up something that I thought Michelle Obama was such an advocate for, and that's making America healthy again, combating, big food and big pharma. I thought Michelle Obama really wanted to champion that and a healthy lifestyle, but apparently not. Everything gets thrown away. As soon as you say you like Donald Trump, I guess you're dead to about everybody, and that just shows you who they are.
Isn't it a fascinating scrambling of political lines? You've got, as you mentioned, I don't know what the current roll call would be, but it would be Tulsi Gabbard, RFK, Bill Ackman, David Sachs, Peter Thiel. I think Peter Thiel has gone in on Donald Trump. Don't quote me. I'm not positive on Peter Thiel. But Joe Rogan, numerous people in that world of the comedian, former probably at least center-left types who are gravitating towards Donald Trump. And now RFK. Now, you could say, well, we've already seen the scramble where people like Bill Kristol or S.E. Cupp left Republicans and Trump and went to the left. And I would say, yeah, but that was largely a reaction to Trump. You know, that's about the man, and defining your politics as simply the personality. What's going on with RFK and Tulsi Gabbard is about more than how you feel about an individual. It's tied to some shifts in ideology within the parties. But we're at a really fascinating moment in politics where we can see in front of our eyes the scramble.
Yeah, and you mentioned some of those defectors like the Adam Kinzingers and the Liz Cheneys and others who have decided that the left is their new home. I mean, for now, I think that they're on some kind of a high because as soon as you say you don't like Donald Trump, you are embraced by the left for at least a short time. But then I think you quickly realize that they're still the left and they will still eat you alive if you really espouse any conservative principles whatsoever. So at first they buddy up to you because you're willing to say a nasty thing about Trump, but just give it some time, they will turn on you too. I have never seen Republicans, though, turn on Democrats or independents that have come over to the Trump side or that have realized that they have some conservative values and principles. I haven't seen the right turn on those people if maybe they have a few remaining liberal policies or ideas. I think it's just a complete opposite reaction, and it just goes to show that the left really does exist in an echo chamber, and if you step out of that echo chamber, you will be eaten alive by those people. And I don't know if you can ever return.
I want to revisit the Kennedys for a moment, Tommy. I just finished reading Killing Kennedy by Bill O'Reilly. And, you know, I think that the take that I gave you, the one that I do believe and that I echoed from Tammy Bruce is your family has covered up for all manner of sin, but you won't forgive someone who not just leaves the Democratic Party, but embraces Donald Trump. On one level, it's disgusting, but it shouldn't also be shocking. One of the things I came away with in Killing Kennedy is just how integral the Democratic Party is to the Kennedys. Like, they are one and the same. Even though you and I can look here today and go, I don't know that JFK, from an ideology and policy perspective, would be a modern Democrat. He would most likely be a Republican. Even though that's the case, the brand of Kennedy is the brand of Democrats. And one of the things you kind of learn about the family is that is the bullseye. Like, if you were doing the concentric circles of integrity to their identity, Democrat, political party, Democrat is the bullseye of their family. And so on one hand, I'm shocked and disgusted, but on the other hand, it makes total sense. Like, what RFK has done is he has betrayed the central identity of the Kennedys.
Yeah, he certainly has. And, you know, I think modern day for the youngins that are growing up now, I think the Obamas are very much like the Kennedys in some ways. I mean, revered by those on the left and respected at some level by those on the right. So I think that the Obamas, and when you think about what the Kennedys have been able to do with the cover-ups and, you know, the way that they've captivated media for generations. I mean, it is very much like what the Obamas have been able to do in present day. But also, when you look at what happened to poor Joe Biden, when Democrats, regardless if they're a Kennedy or a Pelosi or an Obama, it doesn't matter. Once the Democrats decide that you're out, you are out. Look what they did to poor Joe. And now he's been on, you know, he's on another vacation, I believe, or maybe he's back from his vacation. He went from California right to Delaware. We don't know who's controlling anything right now. They put him on after midnight on the East Coast last week. I mean, they don't care about the man. They've just disposed of him and really his entire family. They'll throw them all under the bus now because that's what Democrats do. They are just that cutthroat. And it works to win elections, unfortunately. Republicans are just not the same. We are not built that way.
Tommy, do you think this will have an impact on the election, like RFK endorsing Trump? Will that be meaningful for the election of a president?
I don't don't know if the people that Trump needs to win over were necessarily RFK fans, so I don't know how much of a difference that it makes. But I think having somebody like RFK, if he is out in any sense on the campaign trail with Donald Trump or he's doing media in favor of Donald Trump, I think that that's important because it just shows, to my original point, how bad the current administration is and how bad Kamala is, that you've got RFK who doesn't share all of Trump's values, maybe very few of his policy positions, is actually out there advocating for him because the alternative is so scary to him that he is willing to go against his entire family and his whole party because he doesn't want to see a Kamala as president. So to me, that makes a difference, even if it's just in the media coverage. It's got some pull.
All right, I want to ask Tommy this. Last week here on the Will Kane Show, we talked to Kat Timpf about the most unattractive hobbies for a man. Tommy is very good at generating all types of outrage on the internet, most notably when she said that grown men shouldn't wear jerseys with other men's name on the back. So now I'm going to give Tommy the opportunity to once again upset the internet. Is men playing video games one of the most unattractive hobbies in your mind?
I think it is the most unattractive hobby. I have never seen a woman say, yeah, you know, my boyfriend, my fiance, my husband is playing video games. That's just so sexy. I've just never heard anyone say it. And liberal women, conservative women, there is no woman. The only time that a man playing video games is sexy is if you want your alone time and you want him to be doing something else, enraptured in something else. That's why I don't mind college football, because when my husband comes home from the baseball season, if something on Saturday keeps him busy and I can do my own thing, then I'm a fan of college football. But I feel like video games are much the same thing. I don't know anybody that's thought, wow, like the way that he has the controller or the mouse and the little headset, living in an alternate reality. I find it to be embarrassing. But, you know, to each their own.
Using the word sexy tends to make it the nail in the coffin. Like attractive, I think someone could get into some type of semantic debate about. But when you start talking about, you know, when you use rightfully the word sexy, I think every dude can get it. Even my 25-year-old producers back in New York who play college football 25. Like, do you think she's turned on? You're playing with Florida State right now, and you're explaining the intricacies of the cover 2 defense. Is she turned on? I think you know the answer to whether or not this is sexy.
See, and I think it just goes back to the whole thing of, and I understand it. I can understand it by proxy, that men who are not currently playing sports, they still want to play sports. So if they can play a video game and feel like they're in the military, or they feel like they can be playing a sport, or they can put another man's name on their back and feel like they're involved, I guess that does something for the male psyche. I don't get it personally, but maybe it's like when I watch the Kardashians or when I watch the Housewives, I'm living through them in some way. So maybe that's what it is. But I still don't understand the fascination of watching other men do things and be that concerned or involved with it is interesting to me. But I guess that's kind of the whole reason we have sports. So I guess I'm alone in that.
Well, this is where now I'll plant my flag in defense of men who watch sports. You expanded it beyond playing video games and wearing jerseys into watching sports passionately. And what I would tell you is, I don't care if you find it sexy. This isn't for you. This is for me. I'm doing this for me and the boys. You can go have your time. I don't care right now your thoughts on me watching the Longhorns.
So now there's a difference between watching and watching passionately. I totally understand. Obviously, I'm not a football fan. I'm a baseball fan. I watch baseball. I like baseball. Obviously, my family is involved in baseball. I love baseball. To me, the way that it can ruin somebody's day when somebody's doing something that's not going to really impact their life at all, and the way that it can have such an impact on somebody's mental state, like a lasting impact on somebody's mental state because of what a team does,
Let me explain it to you.
I don't fully understand it.
A I think a lot of men, and I would hope to be in this category, go through life with a certain level of stoicism, Tommy. We keep our emotions in check on very serious issues because when you're confronted with a serious issue, you don't need to feel your way through it. You need to think your way through it. We don't need emotions. We need action. So we strive to be that way in our life. If something tragic happens in my life, I try not to react emotionally. Therefore, on these meaningless things like the outcome of a Dallas Cowboys game, I get to cathartically exercise my emotional response. And I think it's actually not just fun, but healthy. So I sign up. I get on the roller coaster. I go on the ups and the downs on this dumb sports. And I'm fully aware that this is not attractive, that my emotional reaction, usually on the downside, women don't ever care. They don't hold exuberance against you. They hold depression. They don't care about strength. They punish you for weakness. So when I feel down because of the results of a game, I get that you're not attracted to that feeling.
So question for you. I was eating out a couple weeks ago, and I observed a family. The entire family was there. It was a mom, dad, a couple of kids, young kids, and it was a grandma and a grandpa, and they were all eating out together. And the husband had his phone, and he was watching some sporting event on his phone while the rest of his family was eating dinner, and his wife's got two young kids that she's dealing with. The two kids, they're screaming, they're throwing things, disrupting everybody in the restaurant, and he is glued to his little phone on the table watching a game. And I thought she must be a saint, because that phone would be in a million pieces if I were that woman. But I understand being passionate. Take your time, wear the jersey, fully invest in it. But at some point, it gets to a point where I think the obsession might be a little bit beyond, and that might be an instance of that. Would you agree?
No. I look at that story. I hear that story, and I think that man must be a total saint. What type of game was he so invested in that he was willing to go out to dinner with the family and say, I'll deal with it. I'll just watch it on my phone. I'm going to assume this was a very important game to this man, not some casual game, not the 10th game of the weekend. This was the big one for him, and every one of us have been there. So that man, he's the saint.
Wow. I can't wait till you put this on Instagram, because I want to see the reaction. So obviously I'm going to get a lot of hate on a lot of things. That's fine. But this one might be evenly divided. We need to put this out there and ask, and we need to do a poll. If a man at dinner with his family watching sports on his phone makes him a saint or makes his wife a saint for not absolutely eviscerating him, I think we need to put the poll out there and let the internet decide.
There you go. Comments here. All right, I want to ask you this, Tommy. Our mutual friend Clay Travis, he put this out on his Twitter. They've told me to be careful about what I show in my studio, but I don't care. Clay tweeted this, and it's a poll from a newspaper, okay? And Clay has famously said, and I did more in the past, he reads the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal every day. I'm guessing, I think I'm good at this. I'm guessing from the font, I got it wrong. It says New York Times. I was going to say Journal. So here's a poll in the New York Times. It says the Gen Z gender gap. It's fascinating. So women 18 to 29, Tommy, are almost plus 40 for Kamala. Men in the same age group, 18 to 29, are plus 10 Trump. It's the biggest gap, right? Not 30 to 34, not 45 to 64, not 65 plus. That young Gen Z gap, young women and young men, totally different sides of the political spectrum. What do you take from that?
Well, I think abortion is a big part of that. And I think if you remove the abortion question, I think that the numbers would look a lot different on that. But I think that because that issue has been so big for the last couple of years especially, I think that that's a lot of the reason why you're seeing the big divide there. But I think also just the connotation of what it means to be masculine or feminine is really related to these candidates right now, because if you're a young man and you want to be masculine, you are a Trump supporter, because the other side is offering you absolutely nothing in terms of masculinity. I don't care if they think that Doug Emhoff is a sex symbol, or Tim Walz with his rocket kicks or somehow some kind of masculine symbol. No young man is buying that. No young man looks at those two and goes, yeah, that's masculine. But on the other side, there's a lot of young young women who look at Donald Trump, and because they've heard things about Donald Trump or they see some of the things that he says, they go, oh, that he doesn't stand for women, or, it's not feminine to be a Trump supporter. And I think that the Trump campaign can fix that, because I think there are a lot of women who are attracted to the notion of masculinity because we are losing it in men today. But I think that's the biggest problem. Abortion, and then just what it means to be masculine and feminine, has been warped,
I think,
probably by the issue of abortion.
I actually think the second part is what's carrying most of it, more so than even abortion, because I'm not even sure how young men feel about abortion. I'd love to see that, these Gen Z men, how they feel about
not
abortion.
Young men, young women, though. Oh, I don't think that matters at all. I think it's just young women. I think if you took abortion out of it, young women, the difference would be probably pretty significant.
I see. Well, I just think this masculinity thing, I think you're right. I think there's a lot to do with this and why this generation is so divided. But there's one more thing I want to show you on this that I found fascinating, and that is, so it's unsurprising that women get more conservative as they age, right? So that's what this poll reflects. So 18 to 29 women plus 40 Kamala. 30 to 44 women, it's plus 20 Kamala. So it's been halved at this point, right? 45 to 64 women, now it's only like plus 7 Kamala. So they're getting more conservative. They're getting closer to men. Now, this is what I would take that as, Tommy, we've known this for a while. Marriage and children make you more conservative. Okay, so those are generally life events that push people down this path. But then I found this fascinating, Tommy. Look, I don't know if you can see a return, but I'll just describe it to you. 65 plus women go back the other way again. They go back to liberal plus 21. So from 45 to 64, they're their most conservative. They're only plus 7 Kamala. Then they go 65 and they swing back. And I find that fascinating. And I don't know the answer as to why, but in my mind and anecdotally, I kind of don't find that surprising. It's something about it intuitively makes sense to me, but I'm not sure what it is.
I think it's the generation as well. If you're talking about people over 65, maybe they were kind of more in that era of being hippies, and so they're still hippies and they still gravitate towards the more liberal policies, and maybe they're affected by those things and those talking points. That might have something to do with it. But I'll tell you, I come from a family of conservatives. I can't really name one liberal or Democrat in my immediate family. But I will tell you this, like my grandma, who's in her mid-80s, she will vote for Donald Trump, but she doesn't like Donald Trump. And I think it's also just something about the way Donald Trump speaks that an older generation, much older generation, they just find that to be so unpresidential, kind of going back to the Kennedys and the legacy families, that it's off-putting to them, and that might also have something to do with it.
Yeah, I think you're right. All right, last question here with Tommy Lahren. RFK versus J.D. Vance. Now, I started out this interview, I thought I was going to get to this earlier with you, that I respect and I've increasingly appreciated what I've learned about you, and that's some unpredictable independence. And there are those already saying RFK is kind of becoming, it's only been a couple of days, but sort of becoming Trump's running mate over J.D. Vance. Now, here's what I don't know if people know this, but it's true. J.D. Vance's favorabilities are not good. Like, I think it's a negative 13 in a recent poll that I saw. Like, the public is not happy with J.D. Vance for whatever reason, okay? And then there's this debate, well, is RFK going to be on the campaign trail with Trump more, and does he almost take on that number one surrogate position from J.D. Vance? So you and I kind of talked about this last week about J.D. What do you think, RFK versus J.D. Vance?
I think RFK would be an excellent advocate for Donald Trump. I also, as much as I really, really hate to say it, I think Nikki Haley would be a good advocate for Donald Trump. Tulsi Gabbard, a good advocate for Donald Trump. We've heard that maybe she's helping him prepare for the debate against Kamala. That's an excellent choice. But here's the thing about J.D. Vance. I'll be honest. When he first kind of came out, I wasn't a big fan of his because of the childless cat lady's comment. I just knew that was going to be incredibly damning. But since then, when I've watched him, especially on the Sunday shows, I do think that he's done a good job. I think he did a good job yesterday. I think that he's controlled. I think that he comes across likable. But people just do not forget their first impression. And for a lot of people, their first impression of J.D. Vance was the childless cat ladies and that people without kids should have maybe a lesser stake in the country. And some of it was taken out of context. Some of it was maybe a joke, but it does not matter. That is going to stick with him, and it is going to be a problem for him throughout this campaign and throughout the rest of his career, honestly.
I think J.D. Vance, I think that this is something that I find is a challenge in modern politics and certainly in political commentary, is explaining to people the difference between analysis and advocacy. So in other words, if I give you my opinion on the way something is, it doesn't mean it's the way I want it to be. But I have to be able to separate what I want from what is. I like J.D. Vance. I think he's incredibly smart. I think he is an intellectual advocate for MAGA. But there's something about J.D. Vance that's reflected both anecdotally and in the polls that does not seem to be connecting with people. And it's worthy of analysis, I think. I think it's worthy of analysis beyond Donald Trump. Like, what does that tell us? I said the same thing about Ron DeSantis, and DeSantis fans couldn't stand what I had to say because they thought I was advocating against DeSantis. I think DeSantis is an incredible governor. But that doesn't separate me from analyzing what is, and he did not connect with people on a way that could get you elected to the presidency. And I think there's a similar conversation that's going to happen around J.D. Vance.
Disagree with that a little bit because I think if Ron DeSantis had not gone against Donald Trump, I don't think people would have felt that way about Ron DeSantis. And quite honestly, since he's dropped out of the presidential race long ago, I think Ron DeSantis has returned to form. And when I've seen him speak to the media or I've seen him on television, I do believe he comes off incredibly likable. I think he is the future of our party. I think if he's not running against Donald Trump, I think his shine will completely come back, and I think he's the future. With J.D. Vance, I think what it is that he has an incredible ability to connect with people because of his life story. I mean, they made a movie that's obviously a popular movie with very famous actors and actresses in it. So he should have the ability to connect to people on that level. But I think those early podcasts that he did before he was obviously a running mate for Donald Trump, I think they're just going to sink him, because once you take a jab at somebody's personal life choices, especially revolving around being a parent or being a woman who wants to be or doesn't want to be a parent, I think you've now offended people like at the core of where they are in life. And that is very hard to come back from with women.
Love the conversation, and you can continue it because right after the Will Cain Show, starting at 1 Eastern, over at Outkick.com, check out Tomi Lahren is Fearless. I always love talking with Tomi Lahren. Thank you so much, Tomi, for being on the Will Cain Show.
Thanks, Will. I appreciate it. Talk to you soon.